The fact is, God is not like us. For the Word to become flesh, for the Word to come in the likeness of sinful flesh, is to be born into a
Yes.
culture that is mimetically oriented. All human culture is mimetically oriented. And he's born into that. He learns to imitate. He'll learn to imitate Joseph. He'll learn to imitate Mary. He's the oldest in the family. His brothers will learn to imitate him at some point. His sisters, I mean, he's born into this system. But at some point, this figure begins to realize that who he is has nothing to do with identifying with anybody in culture. Jesus doesn't walk around, hey, I'm identifying with the lepers, I'm identifying with the woman with the hemorrhage, I'm identifying with this one. And he doesn't do that. You know, he heals them because he, as a true human, is filled with the Father. He's truly human, but he's truly divine because the fullness of the deity dwells in him in the sense that his character, his behavior, is identical to the Father's character and behavior. Not being or essence, but behavior, character, who he is in relationships.
Christmas and the Cross, today on In the Shadow of the Cross. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of In the Shadow of the Cross. I'm Loren Rosser. I'm here with my two friends, Jim Durkin.
Hello.
All the way out there in Eureka, California, and Michael Harden.
Who is nowhere.
he's up there in Viking land.
Yeah, right.
Minnesota.
Minnesota.
So we have a timely topic today. We want to talk about the incarnation, and I had a little something here I wanted to start with because it goes with something. I remember a complaint my mom used to have when we'd go to church around Christmas time, and you know, all the talk about baby Jesus and Jesus in the manger and all that. I wanted to play the clip, but because of copyright issues, we would get flagged, and it would create a mess for us. So this is from the movie Talladega Nights, the ballad of Ricky Bobby. Will Ferrell plays a race car driver from the South, and this is his prayer at the dinner table. Dear Lord, baby Jesus, or as our brothers in the South call you, Jesus, we thank you so much for this bountiful harvest of Domino's, KFC, and the always delicious Taco Bell. His mom responds, hey, sweetie, Jesus did grow up. You don't always have to call him baby Jesus. It's a bit odd and off-putting to pray to a baby. My mom's big complaint when I was growing up was that at Christmas time, we'd talk about the baby Jesus, and she would go, he grew up, right? He became a man. He didn't stay a baby forever. So I thought that was a good place to start our discussion with, especially in light of things that Michael was posting this week about the incarnation. And so I wanted to just go ahead and open this up. Where do we go with this? Because when you have the Christmas celebration looking at Jesus in the manger, but Michael, you shared something this week where I wanted to start that you said the gospel, it actually doesn't start with Jesus in a manger. We start at a different place.
So there's a couple of things here. One is Paul says, I preach Christ crucified. Paul doesn't seem to have an incarnation narrative, such as we find, for example, in the virgin birth stories of Matthew and Luke, or even the prologue to the Gospel of John, where the Logos becomes sarx or flesh. Paul talks about the sending of the Son becoming in the likeness of sinful flesh, that kind of thing. But he doesn't have this start with the incarnation. God came down, became a human being. No, he starts with the cross, and then he works backwards. And the Johannine author might have that incarnational theology in the prologue, but it's a very cruciform Christology, because this very word that becomes flesh has been rejected already by his own. And we know when we perceive his glory, we know that glory in the Gospel of John is a reference to the cross. So there's these indicators in the New Testament that the writers of the New Testament aren't necessarily thinking in terms of Nicaea. So here's the thing. The West, and the East, both the East and the West, because the creed starts off in its Trinitarian form, God the Father, who creates all things, visible and invisible, blah, 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 and in Jesus Christ, His only Son, our Lord, who for our sakes and for our salvation became flesh and became a man, da, 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 da. And then down through, and He suffered under Pontius Pilate, died, was buried. Okay, so we get this little chronology here. So we've got to start with incarnation. Well, this was really, really, really important in the fourth century because the metaphysics they were dealing with, they were having to deal with Gnosticism and affirm the full humanity of Jesus as well as His full divinity. Although the emphasis was on His divinity. Okay, now, the problem is the emphasis on Jesus' divinity in the centuries leading up to Nicaea, that growing emphasis on His divinity, will lead to a functional docetism because Jesus becomes so divine that He's no longer we can't relate to Him,
Mhm.
and that's where the cult of the martyrs comes in. The martyrs were real human beings, our grandfathers knew them or whatever, and they're real human beings, and so we
Yeah.
can follow. There are models. Jesus no longer is a model after
Oh
Nicaea.
no.
Yeah, and that's
Wow.
why there's nothing in the Nicene Creed about His life. You see, Nicene Creed is pure philosophical metaphysics done in theological keys. Um, and this presents a conundrum because if we start our gospel, as everybody in the West does, with the incarnation, we're automatically starting with Platonic metaphysics. And if there's anything that has happened in the last 200 years, it has been the virtual deconstruction of that kind of thinking. We don't live in that world anymore. Plato's notions of both divinity and anthropology, useful in their day, are no longer useful for us now. And so there's going to be, I mean, I could think of off the top of my head about 20 of my friends out there who've written books on, Jesus, and they're all heavy, heavy into the incarnation. And I just want to go, okay, the problem you're going to end up with is you have a Jesus you can't follow. And so when I come to this, when I'm dealing with this, and I look at the creed affirming Jesus becomes incarnate, and in Greek that's sarx authenta, sarx being flesh, and in Latin incarnatus est. And Jesus also became a human, and anthropocenta in Greek, and in Latin homos factus. It's saying two very different things that are both essential. The first, sarx authenta, has to do with Jesus becoming creaturely. The second, anthropocenta, has to do with His specific person, a singular human being. The first, becoming flesh, has to do with the corporate character of the one who's taken up in Himself that which was created. The second has to do with His assumption as a real human being. And it's important to affirm both of these particular perspectives. My argument is that Christianity, by so divinizing Jesus, that they lose His humanity. Well, we know in the last 300 years, uh, where this has all been questioned and Jesus' humanity's come up. Now we're kind of at the other end of the spectrum. Jesus is not really divine. He shows us kind of who God is, like all the great religious leaders did, Moses and Gandhi and Mohammed, and they show us who God is, and so, but He's not really God. His death doesn't really affect anything. And they've emptied in our modern world, we've emptied Jesus' divinity right out, and now He's just like us. And so, for the modern, for Jesus to become human means, He validates our humanity. He validates our existence as human beings. That's bullshit, straight up. He doesn't validate our existence as human beings. He exposes the problem of our humanity by becoming flesh, and by becoming flesh obedient to the Father, He creates a new model for us to follow. And this is really, I think, key in the New Testament. And we've lost it today because we basically turned Jesus into a figure we can either believe in or not believe in, or believe what we want to believe, or this or that or the other. But That's, he's just kind of a nice, good guy in liberal Protestantism, progressive Christianity. He's not the son of the father. And so we've kind of come, in a sense, full circle, and we have to revisit. We have to really, really go back and ask, what were these guys in the creeds trying to do? What did they omit the life of Jesus that was very important? But remember, at that time, they also still had a catechetical tradition. That catechetical tradition was teaching people how to follow Jesus. Okay, we don't have that today
Mhm.
at all. And so you could still find the humanity of Jesus in the catechetical tradition, even if it's not, out up front in the creeds. And the other thing to note is that in the early church, yes, there were debates about the date of Easter in the second century. Okay, fine. But Easter is the celebrated holiday, and Christmas doesn't even become a so-called holy day until long after Constantine, into the 400s. And that's when we start getting Christmas as the big event. And we start the liturgical year. And we start creating the liturgical year. Where does it begin? Advent. We're waiting, Jesus becomes flesh, and boom. And then we got Christmas as the big holiday. And that eventually, by the time it gets to the 20th century and it becomes something that business can buy into, just
Right. Yeah.
becomes capitalist.
Sure.
you know. And so
Yeah.
we lose everything about Christmas. And by trying to go back theologically and go, we got to get back to the creeds. No, no. Yes, the creeds are the place that we all agree on ecumenically. We need to have a good standard, but they're not complete. Um, I think, for example, the first gospel written, the Gospel of Mark, there's not an incarnation there. It's this announcement Jesus is on the scene. Now, Marcion, the great heretic, said, "Oh, look, man, Jesus kind of appeared as this 30-year-old man on the scene. There was no pre-existence before that in human life. Um, and that's false. That's a wrong way to look at this. But
Sure.
it's also just as wrong to try and argue that the incarnation is a validation of our humanity. It is not. It's God's affirmation of that which God created and that God will redeem, and he does it first by showing us what real humanity is like. And so the incarnation is the apocalypse of our human doing. It's the apocalypse of our human civilization. It's the apocalypse of the way we understand what it means to even be a human. And so today, in today's world, you can be anything you want. You can identify with anything you want, and Jesus identifies with you, and all this dagging nonsense that goes on, because we all want Jesus to be like us.
Hmm.
And that's not the gospel. The gospel is not
Yeah.
that Jesus can be like you, it's that you can be like Jesus.
Yeah, I like that's actually why I shared the Ricky Bobby thing at the start because it's like Ricky Bobby wants baby Jesus, and then further
Yeah,
down you find out his friend wants Jesus in the tuxedo T-shirt, and
yeah,
it goes
yeah,
on to
yeah, yeah,
create
yeah,
Jesus
yeah.
into the image you want. And I like how you pointed out that the problem used to be Jesus was so divine, with Docetism and Gnosticism. Jesus was so divine that he was no earthly good, basically, he was not
Yeah,
human. But
right.
you're right.
Mhm.
I didn't really connect those dots till you brought it up. That yeah, we've gone completely the other way in this culture now, where it's now Jesus is my buddy,
Yeah,
and he's
yeah,
just like me, whatever I am.
yeah, yeah,
But even when I'd read the scriptures, I remember when the thing that would conflict that view is when I watch his disciples call him master. And I'm
yeah.
like, that speaks of somebody who's above you in authority and someone you're supposed to imitate and follow, not somebody who's going, hey, let's do things your way.
Yeah, yeah, whatever you want, it's all good.
Right.
I'm Jesus. I just love you anyway. You can do whatever you want.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like there's this we've gone completely the other way, I think, in our society. In fact, Lily and I were talking about a popular Jesus series that's going on recently, and I told Lily, I go, I have a hard time watching it. There's a lot of good stuff in it, but I go, I have a hard time watching it because I feel like they psychoanalyze him too much,
Yeah,
and they make him too Americanized and too much like me in
yeah,
a
yeah,
sense,
yeah,
so that
yeah,
I can identify.
yeah.
But that's not to say he wasn't human. But I think you made the distinction that it's apocalyptic because he showed our human ways of doing things are so amiss from who the Father is and giving us that pattern. So, and Jim, I see the wheels in your head turning there, so I want to hand it over to you and hear what's going on in that big brain of yours.
Well, I was just thinking before Michael uh, shared there uh, how I remember Jesus, and he rode his bicycle down a kind of a dirt path that didn't get paved for a few years after, he left Nazareth, and we hung out at the park together, and both of us got sick on the merry-go-round, and you know said all that for a reason, because isn't that kind of how we do that? It's like the best days of our life. Um, Wait a minute, that's a soap opera. Anyway, the days of our life, the best days, it's like, well, that's kind of how Jesus's life must have been, you know.
Yeah.
And I remember when he got his first stingray, with a banana seat, and it's like
Joseph
Lauren,
had to show him how to ride.
Lauren, you're too young to know what the stingray and banana seat are.
Oh, I know what the banana seat is, except just like bell bottoms, it was you did not have a banana seat. You did not wear bell bottoms in the 80s. I remember I had an
Yeah.
old banana seat bike, and I begged my dad to change the seat.
Oh gosh.
Well, I did get told, and this is the honest truth. Nehru jackets were really popular for what, like 1 year maybe,
Yeah,
and so I had a couple of them. My brother had a couple,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I wore one to church one day, and we had this old lady that just flat out rebuked both of us. Nehru is from India, and India is Hindi, and Hindi is not Christian, and God would never, Jesus would never be caught in a Nehru jacket. And I think that's good, huh, Mike? But I think that goes to what we're talking about right now. How, people are trying to figure this out. How can he be fully God, fully man? If he, okay, which of the miracles did he perform because he was God?
Yeah.
He could endure all the pain of the cross because, I mean, after all, he's
He
God.
was God. Yeah.
He probably didn't feel it at all, you know? And
Oh
and
man.
then and then people want to go all the way over to the other side that, man, I mean, the reason he was asleep in the boat with the storm was because he was tired, and you could pick that up. It's like, what's he saying to Peter after he's pressed by the crowd? He's saying, Peter, get me away from these people,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, get me to the other side. And he gets in the boat and he's tired. He goes to sleep. Of course he does. Why? Because he's human. And we want him either to be human or we want him to be God. And then I hear a teaching that's kind of popular in certain circles. Uh, well, really, he was fully human, full of God. And if he was fully God, fully human, he's not my example. and we're choking on the wrong things, aren't we, Michael?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's become I guess the longer I'm at this, and the more I am really aware that modern Christianity, as we know it, is about as far from the gospel as you can get. And
Yeah.
I'm not trying to claim that I know the gospel or anything. I'm just trying to look at the way the New Testament writers do their theological thinking, the way the early church did its theological thinking, the way the reformers did their theological thinking, the way our moderns do. Yeah, I'm looking at the thinking processes underneath it all. And I am just really finding nothing but distortion and noise. There's no signal, as it were, just noise. And I just really find, these books about God coming down and validating us as human beings and I just want to go, you just do not understand at all what the cross is about and why we begin our gospel with the cross. There isn't a Yeah, I have an essay I just have been working on. It's called Demythologizing or Demystification. And my argument there is that the divine is not demythologized in the New Testament. The human is apocalypsed. That's what's happening. We're getting revealed for who we are. And as that happens, we really see that God is not like us. God is not like us, you know. Um, and so to have an understanding of Jesus that is true to the tradition, where we can affirm both his divinity and his humanity, we have to have another uh, way of thinking that allows us to do that. And this is where I think modern anthropology, particularly I think the mimetic theory, as you know, offers us a way out because it shows us that, first of all, we are relational. We're made relational. This is Bonhoeffer's argument
Hmm.
about
Hmm.
Genesis, to be made in the image of God is to be made in relationship. Okay, Girard comes and unpacks that, shows that desire itself is relational. Okay, now we can understand how we end up where we end up as humans. But then the reality is, Jesus doesn't just try to turn us to a different understanding of God. Jesus tries to show us the desire of the Father. What is the Father's desire? And the Father's desire is has nothing at all to do with health, wealth, prosperity. Da, 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 da. No. The desire of the Father is for us in relationship to learn how to relate to each other the way the Father cares for us and the Son by the Spirit. That's all it is. That's all it is. It's that simple. But we got to complicate it with all kinds of things, in order to have something to say. And
Hmm.
Wow,
this,
Hmm.
by
your statement right there about the Father desiring us to be in relationship with one another like he is, um, that just unpacked and took so much garbage off the table because it's like so much there's so much additions like you were just saying there's so many things that are added on and all these burdens and like I've got people going through health issues and things and there's all this
Yeah.
stuff going on that enters in as far as what about healing, what about this and what and when it simplifies down to loving one another as the Father loves us, it just like you said, it clarifies everything, and it gets, I don't know, it sets the compass right.
One thing that struck me this morning, I was walking to the coffee shop and I was just meditating on this, and I realized that in wanting to turn Jesus into our image, we have participated in the biggest lie that has been on the scene now for 400 years. And so when you look at, for example, Albert Schweitzer in the first decade of the 20th century wrote his very, very famous book, The Quest of the Historical Jesus. The German title is
Mhm.
Von Reimarus zu Vrede, which means from Reimarus to Vrede, from the, late 1600s to the beginning of the 20th century. Okay.
Mm.
And one of the things Schweitzer notes is when you look at the 19th century German quest for the historical Jesus, Schweitzer's argument is that every single person turns Jesus into themselves. Well, for God's sake, the Jesus seminar in the 80s and 90s turned Jesus into a professor of morals and ethics, the
Mhm.
social prophet.
Mhm.
I mean, and we just cannot start with this kind of speculation. We have to start where the gospel starts, and that's at the cross. That's where humanity is revealed in its ugliness, in its fullness, in its distortion. And that's what's revealed. We don't want that. We want Christmas. We want little sweet Jesus and good news, and God comes and we give presents and we're all happy. And it's like, no, 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 no. Think of it this way. You're a good person and you got some presents and you walk into the middle of a massive, massive human conflict. People fighting and fighting. You going, I got some gifts for you. Well, what's going to happen to you? It's like, it's absurd. It's absurd to try and mix these together.
Right. Wow. Yeah, that was such a such a good picture of the reality that we're seeing.
um, while you were talking right there, two words just kind of jumped into my head. The reason why the baby Jesus is so popular, let's put it that way, um, is because that's an acceptable narrative.
Mm,
He's cute. Uh, you've got this teenage girl that got pregnant and should have been just rejected by everybody, maybe even stoned. And yet her husband just loved her enough to believe the angel, and angels are involved, and shepherds, and, stars. And, you got this really, and it's an acceptable, uh, place to start.
right.
The cross, the cross re, um, um, it brings to us rejection, murder, ugliness, and nobody wants to identify with that.
No.
So even when we identify with the cross, we identify with he came to his own and his own did not receive him. We identify with the Romans, they did it.
Yeah.
Uh, and Jesus loved me so much that he accepted them killing him because he looked down through the corridors of time and he saw me and he said, even if you were the only one, I would still do this. And
This.
because we can't face the ugliness of humanity,
No.
the rejection of humanity.
No.
We are not accepting people
No.
as humans.
No.
We don't, we find, I was reading an article, uh, I think it was this morning, might have been last night, I can't remember. But anyhow, it was from our friend Jamie Engelhardt.
Hmm.
And he was talking about all this controversy about hell and, a
Right.
popular figure, taking
Yes.
a stand. And he was just saying, look, in the beginning of this thing, first century, whatever, there were several views, and those guys got along. Did they debate? Yes. Did they debate sometimes aggressively? their positions? Yes. But they didn't write a person off and say, well, because you believe this, you're not a Christian. And I was like, man, how easy is it in this modern time to, oh, even among progressives, oh, you believe everything I believe except on this one point, so I can't fellowship you.
Mhm.
And that's the same ugliness that the cross brings out that we don't want to deal with.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a whole lot easier to see Jesus in a manger and people worshiping him and kings, although it wasn't kings, it was astrologers, but kings came with gold and and oh, we love that story. We can accept that story because that's where
That's prosperity.
rubber hits. That's exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. And that's the God of the universe humbling himself and allowing himself to be born in a stinky manger. There's no scripture that says that.
No.
There is a scripture that talks about him humbling himself and being killed, you know,
I,
even
I, I,
even to the point of the cross, it says.
I got to think that Joseph made a bad investment in crypto somewhere because that's a lot of gold, man.
Exactly right.
Where did it all go?
Right. Well, it's interesting, Jim, how you talked about him coming in the manger, and then eventually goes to the cross, and his life. That's the story we like, the manger story. It's interesting because when I hear that told, and often what I heard growing up and through the years was, that he came to die. And that's why he came. And it was basically that Jesus came because God needed somebody to kill. He's God's
Yeah,
sacrifice. And so he's
yeah.
going to go to the
Yeah.
cross. And even that detaches us from everything because it's just, well, this
Yeah,
is just God's thing. And I'm just a bystander watching it
yeah,
happen. And
yeah,
then
yeah,
he goes and dies. But
Yeah.
when you go, but when you take it instead and you go, he came and he's going to die because we're going
we're
to
gonna
kill
kill
him.
him. Right.
I'm going to kill him. I'm going to be part of that mob that participates, and his life is going to expose the brokenness in me because of my hatred that's going to manifest towards him. That changes the narrative a little bit there, that this little baby that came into the world is going to become a man who's going to be very different than the rest of us and not think like us, not to participate in our systems, our thinking, our mentalities, our violent
Hmm.
practices.
Hmm.
And it's going
Hmm.
to so offend us.
Yeah,
So this little baby is going to be one of the most, if not the most offensive human being who ever lived, and we're going to
yeah.
kill him for it.
Yeah, and we want to go, oh, it's all empire. Empire, Jesus comes in. You know what's I gotta just do an aside here. I get a kick out of this. So the same people, the very same people that deny historical validity to the virgin birth narratives. Oh, Mary couldn't have been a virgin. Blah, 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 blah. This very same people to do that want to turn Matthew's Jesus went into Egypt as history so they could come back and say, look, he was an immigrant. Like,
Right.
are you
Yeah.
serious? Is this your hermeneutic? Is this really the way you exegete texts?
Yeah.
Give me a break.
Right. And what I'm seeing and been running into is, and I don't want to name anything because I don't want us to get stoned to death here, but I've
Well, I'll
seen
just do that later. That's fine.
but there's this whole thing of it's become that being Christ-like means you conform to whatever is the unacceptable belief or philosophy that is the thing, and that's what
Mm,
makes you Jesus rather than
Yeah,
it being
yeah,
that thing,
yeah.
that mentality, that belief is to conform to Christ.
right.
And that's where I've been seeing people become more evangelistic for a particular philosophy, belief, or popular narrative
Hmm.
than they
Hmm.
are for Jesus, but they think they're doing the Jesus thing.
Yeah. It's absolutely remarkable how many people, especially Christians, especially influencers,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, we'll look at it this way. Influencers are nothing more than the desires of all the people that want to be like them and that they want to like them. And so, of course, you're going to put material out there that caters and coddles the
Sure,
crowd so you
sure.
get more likes, more money. I mean, it's all about the money.
All right.
All
Yeah.
these influencers, all of them, I don't care
Oh, yeah.
how godly they are. I don't care how good they are. Cheryl and I have watched one of our friends, I'll say that, devolve from being almost, I would say, almost prophetic in a way, to just becoming a panderer to the left. And it's just like, why? Why? Because when you start to
Hmm.
lose your following, you got to say things that bring them back,
Yeah.
and keep them in,
Right.
keep them in. And so we've noticed on one platform, this person is one way, on another platform, they're another way. It's just like, this is
Hmm.
disingenuous, you know?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, they want to put Christ back into Christmas. Well, if you put Christ into Christmas, you are putting the crucified Christ into Christmas. You are
Hmm.
looking at that little baby and you are saying, dude, this is not going to be a fun ride for you. I mean, really. And the thing is that, how do I say this kindly? I'm having a hard time thinking of the kind way to say this. It's very hard because I'm almost upset at the way modern Christianity has turned the living Lord Jesus Christ, the Son of the Father, the Word of God, the river of living waters, the resurrection and the life. We have turned him into nothing more than a little teeny version of ourselves that's acceptable, so that as long as we can meet that, then we're acceptable too. And so
Right.
and so look at the category of sin. There is no sin. I mean, on the right, everything they do is sin. So they
Right.
got it all.
Right.
They can't do anything without sinning. Oh crap! I wore a Nehru shirt. I'm gonna die. Uh, but the left, there's no sin. You can do anything you want. You can be anything you want, and Jesus identifies with you. That's bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know.
and then in line with
Just
what you're saying too, I've seen also you get like you were talking about the influencers. You get going on that path, it becomes a trap because if you're getting paid for whether it be a stand against deconstruction or a stand for a particular thing on the left, you now you're getting your views and your money from your books, your writings and stuff. You cannot for
Yeah.
1 second ever
let
stop
up.
and say,
That's
"Oh,
right.
that person is correct. I'm wrong on
Right.
this point."
That's right.
You
That's
can
right.
never do that.
Right.
And so you build your own cage for yourself.
Let's do another one. Jesus identifies with our brokenness. What the hell does that mean? No, Jesus learned obedience through suffering. He didn't come
Right.
to identify with our brokenness. He came to do the Father's will. He learned as a human being what it meant to be truly human, desiring only the Father's will. He doesn't come to identify with our brokenness. Oh, look, you're really screwed up. I'm going to be screwed up like you. No,
Right.
that's not what he's doing. You
Yeah.
know?
It's like the movie maker in me. I immediately think of the movie The Matrix when Morpheus
No.
offers Neo before he's Neo, Mr. Anderson or whatever, the
Right.
the the red and the blue pill. And
Yeah.
when he offers him the red pill before he takes it, he decides on the red pill and he says, "I'm only offering you the truth.
Yes.
That's it."
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like Neo's gonna suffer when he starts seeing what the world's really like and all that stuff. But I love that it's like he doesn't make any promises that this is gonna make your
No.
life wonderful and great.
Right.
It's like you're gonna
Right.
see things as they really are, and you're gonna have a crisis.
Yep. That's right.
Hmm.
Yeah. We're what's the word? We're reluctant to allow God to be God.
Yeah,
We just seem to want to turn God into something that God is not. And the fact is, God is not like us. For the Word to become flesh, for the Word to come in the likeness of sinful flesh is to be born into a
Yes.
culture that is mimetically oriented. All human culture is mimetically oriented. And he's born into that. And he learns to imitate. He'll learn to imitate Joseph. He'll learn to imitate Mary. He's the oldest in the family. His brothers will learn to imitate him at some point, and his sisters. You know what I mean? He's born into this system. But at some point, this figure begins to realize that who he is has nothing to do with identifying with anybody in culture. Jesus doesn't walk around, hey, I'm identifying with the lepers. I'm identifying with the woman with the hemorrhage. I'm identifying with this one. And he doesn't do that. You know, he heals them because he, as a true human, is filled with the Father. He's truly human, but he's
Yes.
truly divine because the fullness of the deity dwells in him in the sense that his character, his behavior is identical to the Father's character and behavior, not being or essence, but behavior, character, who he is in relationships, you know. Um, I don't need Jesus to come and identify with my addictions. I don't need just Jesus to come and identify with my poverty. I don't need Jesus to come and I don't need any of that. That's just life. You know, what I need is a God that can come into my world like I'm in my world and teach me how to live in this world with gratitude, with hope, with love, caring for each other. Like I said, you know, when I was walking this morning, I wondered why does it seem that in human history God is absent? Well, the whole point of the gospel is, as God, I'm not supposed to take care of you. I'm trying to show you to take care of each other.
Yeah.
You're to take care of each other. You know, I'll give you my spirit. You go heal. I'll give you my spirit. You go teach. I'll give you my spirit. You go live in love. I'll give you my spirit. You have true hope. Oh, you know, but the divinity just doesn't stay. We want divinity out there fixing everything. And the gospel is, look, there's 8 billion of you on this planet. Start taking care of each other. You know, and that doesn't mean protesting everything and getting all no, it means if your neighbor is hungry, feed him. If your neighbor is thirsty, give him water. You are not the savior of the world. You are only the caregiver to those in your world. You can meet the needs of those in
Yes.
your world. You know, Jesus didn't come to save the world. He just met the needs of those in his own world, and God vindicated that and made him the savior of the world.
That's good.
Oh, thanks.
I like that. I no, I mean, is that's something I wrote down. I'm gonna chew on that for a while. Um, I'm not disagreeing with you.
Oh, you
I
can.
want to
I
broaden
don't mind.
I want to broaden something out a little bit. I think in a way he does identify
Hmm.
with the suffering of the world, but he identifies with it as um, through his love, through his compassion. So instead of like, oh, I know what it's like to be poor. I was born in Nazareth, and we didn't have much. There's only about 400 people in the whole town. And
My dad lost
man,
all the
my dad
gold.
worked so hard. I mean, he was a carpenter and he didn't have a marketing firm behind him. It's like, I mean,
No?
it was hard. You know, it's like, but what did he do? He introduced something about Father who loves us so much and is so close to us, he is actually in us.
Yeah,
His I'm going to use the term kingdom, although I know, Michael, you don't like that.
it's
You've
okay.
got another whole definition, and I love your definition, but
Oh, thank you.
this thing is in you.
Yeah,
I'm going to teach you, regardless of where your life is at any given moment, you can have peace.
yeah.
You can have joy. You are declared righteous before the Father.
Yeah.
You don't have to like, oh, this must have happened you know, because I said bullshit on on a
Oh,
PG show. You know,
no.
it's like,
Oh, it's out in the
you know,
fields.
and he introduced us to someone he called father.
Mhm. Yes.
Well, in introducing us to it, to father, he challenged us. He says, now I want you to just love each other the way I'm loving you.
Yes.
That's all I want you to do.
Yeah.
I don't want you to I don't want you to write a whole rule book of new ways to behave. I just want you to love the way I love you. And if we could just get that down, well, I don't have to love the whole world. What you just said, Michael, is that's the crux of the matter. Who's in front of me right now?
Yeah.
What do they need? What do they need? And if it's just a glass of water,
Yeah.
then they don't need a whole steak dinner. They need a
Yeah.
glass of water.
Right.
And
And
government
you
programs to
know,
support them.
and we like, man, I had a man in my church 40 years ago when I was pastoring in New York, and he told me, he said, the gifts of the Spirit, and in Corinthians, and then there's another list over in Romans, the gifts, and he said there's one in Romans that he said I have that gift. I said, oh, what one is that? He said, the gift of giving. I said, oh, awesome. I said,
Here's my
well,
PayPal.
I, and I said, so let me ask you this. I said, uh, are there ministries you're sowing into right now? No, but I have a whole list of ministries that I want to start sowing into as soon as I make my first million. Yeah, I have this gift of giving. And when I have more money than I need, then I'll eke out a little bit. And
Yeah.
I'm like, we don't get it.
No.
Giving is mowing the lady's lawn next door because she's up in years and she can't really get out there and do it. And her
Yeah.
husband has Alzheimer's and he can't do it. That's giving. And
Yeah.
we don't get it.
No.
And people want to talk about, yeah, but the Bible also says I have to love my enemies. And how in the hell am I supposed to love my enemies? I can't even, and it's like, would you stop worrying about the end of the matter and just start at the beginning?
Yeah.
That's good.
Well, here again, so we got the incarnation. Why did Jesus come? Well, Jesus came as a baby to die so God would forgive us our sins. Okay. Start at the cross.
So I could go to heaven.
Yeah, so
Don't
I
Yeah.
go to
forget
heaven.
that part.
Start at the cross and you have a whole different picture. You're not dealing with a transactional God. You're dealing with a God who forgives in the midst of being killed, in the midst of
Yes.
dying, in the midst of being tortured. This is a God who forgives. We don't want that. We want our forgiveness to be in the sweet by and by and to give us a little comfort in this life so we can go through it. But to go through intense suffering and be able to forgive. Now that is discipleship. And we don't I remember back in 2019 or 2017, I should say, when, the a certain group of Christians decided to come against me, and that was fine. It destroyed my life and everything. But the good news is it got me out of that rat race. You know, it got me out of becoming an up and coming, leftist speaker that could go to conferences and rally the troops for, some some kind of stupid legislation that taxed the hell out of everybody for nothing. It saved me from that. It saved me from my ego. I think if I had kept going further, my ego would have gotten embedded and I would have continued, in that vein. And looking back now on where I was in 2019, I used to be very, very angry and upset, that my life got destroyed. Now I'm just going, I'm thankful for my Calvary. I had a
Yeah.
Calvary experience, I got scapegoated
Is
online.
that
You all
true?
know this story.
Yeah.
But I can look back on it and go, that was a cleansing event, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and I think this is one of the benefits of my being married to Cheryl is that she has her moniker is, a tiny little place. And she has really learned how to be content with very
Mhm.
little. And, it's been an ego diminishing process for me in this relationship to learn, I don't need praise. I don't need 1,000 people buying my books. I don't need influencer status. I don't need everybody to like me. I'm just called to speak the truth as I understand it. Let the chips fall where they may, and it has nothing to do with whether people like me or don't like me. It's like Jim. You'll say, "Well, I like that." And I'm going, "Okay, it's good, but I'm glad you like it." But we have got to get out of this world of thumbs up, thumbs down.
Right.
That's the
Yeah.
world we're in. That's the world we're in.
Living for likes.
Yeah, and we've
Yeah.
got to get this is killing us. It's killing the gospel. And I'm just watching these people put up these posts to get the thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, and it's just like, no, 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 you
It's,
know.
it was interesting because we recently had Hugh Jackman here at the TV station where I work,
That would
and
have been cool.
but I watched the crowds around
Yeah,
him.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it
yeah,
was insane. I walk into the
yeah,
studio. I didn't even know he was going to be there, and I walk in that morning. I always do my routine where I check on the crew, go in to check on the camera operators, and the whole station's in the studio. And they're going, we can't move the cameras because they're in the way. So I had to go out there, shepherd people, move, Um,
yeah.
but the thing that was interesting was thinking about it. As I watched, I told Lily, I do not envy his life. I go, there is no freedom there. There is no, you're everywhere you go to be surrounded by people, having to watch every step you take, every move you make.
Every move you
I'll be
make,
watching
too.
you.
Yay.
But it's like, what a miserable existence. And now we're not influencers. We're not, have never been on that scale, but that's just it amplified of what you're talking about, Michael, where you get into that place where you start generating likes, you get a certain level of popularity, it becomes its own trap.
It's a dopamine thing, man. It's a
Yeah,
dopamine thing. It's like, give me more, give me more.
right.
Listen, I like it when people like my posts. Don't get me wrong. I
Sure.
like it.
Of
Um,
course.
but I also know that I've got my interlocutors out there, and you've seen these guys come on my
Yeah.
page, and they'll do their thing, and it's just like it's all good. It's all good, unless you're unless you're acting like a certain body part, you're okay.
Right.
You can argue all you want, as long as
Yeah.
it's logical, rational, coherent, But if you get nasty, of course, then you're gone. But that's just to stop the mimetic rivalry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we've got to turn it around. We've got to turn the gospel around. We've got to stop this. God became flesh to identify with us. That is not what's going on. The gospel is not about our identity. The world today, it's all about identity. Who do you identify with? Which group do
Yes.
you identify with? Do they,
Yep. Yep.
and how high can you get up in that group? And it's like this is all wrong. This is about God coming to reveal to us what we're really like. And this includes me. I'm a hustler.
Yeah.
I can get online and I can say things to try and get people to like me. I can get online and try to intentionally piss people off, so they'll hate me because then I look good too,
Hmm.
But it's like, no, This world we live in is not the real world. And Jesus did not come to identify with this civilizational structure we have. We are being apocalypsed as human beings. We are being revealed for what we are. What does the baby Jesus reveal? Not that Jesus was an immigrant, not that Jesus was poor. What does this whole narrative show us? It shows us the vulnerability of God. That's all it shows us is the vulnerability of God. And God is more vulnerable on the cross than he is in the manger. So let's
Right.
get
Wow.
that
Yeah.
straight.
Yep, that's
Yeah.
good.
That's
I
very
think I
true.
think I think a lot of times our issue is with our definition of terms.
Mm.
Our definition of terms, love. Well, yeah, but love also speaks the truth when it needs to be spoken, you know, and love doesn't let others get away with stuff, and that kind of stuff. And peace, peace is like, ah, man, everything is wonderful in its own way, and I'm listening to you as you're talking, Michael, and I'm thinking, you know from 19 was it 2019 to today, through pain, through suffering, you have come more to a place of peace
Yes,
than you were before.
that's absolutely
You were
true.
you were angry, you were hurt, you were
Yeah,
probably bitter, you were
yeah,
vindictive.
yeah,
I want to strike out, and now it's like, you know what?
yeah,
They're out there. The
yeah,
people who love everything I say, the people who are against everything I say, they're
yeah,
out there. But you know what? It doesn't matter. I'm okay with it.
yeah.
Well, saying I'm okay with it, if you wanted to Christianize the term, is I have peace that passes understanding.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And we want to spiritualize this being conformed into his image.
Yeah,
We want to spiritualize it.
yeah,
It's not about
no,
growing a beard and wearing a white robe, it's
yeah,
just about through suffering. Paul said, I want to identify with his suffering.
yeah.
Why? Because that's how we learn to be transformed.
Yes, we learn
Yeah.
obedience through suffering,
Yes.
Yep. Yep.
Yes.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or we just stay bitter and we don't learn obedience, you
Yeah.
know. The same writer.
Unfortunately, though, that's not something that'll preach.
No, it won't preach. It doesn't make money, you know. Yeah, you're right. There's no theology of glory
Yeah.
here, you know, and yeah, I don't know why we think that Jesus came to kind of make us better. He didn't come to make us better. The gospel comes to slay us, like Luther says. The gospel kills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
kills us just like we killed him. The good news is that it slays this old way of being and
Mm.
relating.
Yeah.
And then we're raised into newness of life, into this Christic life, which is not mystical. It's real relationships. It's learning
Yes.
to love your spouse and your children and your neighbors and your co-workers and your podcast partners with the same kind of love that the Father loves you with. With the measure you measure,
Yes.
you will be measured. You
Yeah.
know, we don't want that. We
Yeah.
want a big measure for ourselves, but when it comes to others, we want to use thimbles. You know,
Yeah.
I'll love Dirk in
That's
a little bit because he's kind of, he's cool, but no, or you know what I mean.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Well, I think of a friend of mine, Wayne Jacobson. He shared how he was going through a time where people were just hating on him and
yeah,
saying all kinds of terrible things about it, and he
yeah,
and he was praying, God, defend me, said wanting to
yeah,
take a stand for himself, and he
yeah,
heard the Lord speak to his heart. I'm not your PR manager,
yeah,
and that has always stuck with me. because it's like in those
Yeah.
moments, it's like that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the Father to be my PR manager, defend me, save my
Yeah.
reputation.
Yep.
And is that not what you're talking about, Michael? With this, a huge part of the suffering is our reputation.
It's all about our reputation. It's all about how we want others to perceive us.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we want people to like us. Why? So that we don't become scapegoats.
Oh man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
As long
yeah,
as everybody
yeah.
likes you, you're not gonna have to worry.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh man. Wow,
Crazy, huh?
that's
Yeah.
one to chew on at the end of this. But
yeah.
this has been a really good conversation, you guys.
I hope I've ruined your Christmas. No.
Yeah. Yes. Go sing some Christmas carols. Have a nice
That's
day.
right. That's right.
All right. Well, because of time, I'm going to cut it a little short, but I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And this should be up before Christmas. So
Yeah,
have
we wish you a
everybody.
merry crucified Christmas.
Yes, have a Merry Crucified Christmas.
Oh, that's a slogan.
Yes.